The human brain is wired for efficiency. We have what's called the cognitive miser effect. We prefer solutions that minimize effort. Every time you take out a credit card, punch in numbers, wait for approvals, your prefrontal cortex is doing micro-calculations of effort. UPI removes that friction. 2 taps, a scan, done. In neuroscience, we know that dopaminergic circuits, the ones tied to motivation and reward, don't just fire when you get a reward. They fire when the pathway to the reward is simple and predictable. UPI design hacks this circuit beautifully. For Americans used to clunky legacy systems, UPI feels like going from dial-up internet to 5G overnight, and the brain adapts fast. Once people experience that speed and simplicity, their striatum and prefrontal networks encode it as the new baseline. They can't go back. This is why Silicon Valley is watching with a mix of awe and anxiety. Let's start with a basic truth about the human brain. It craves simplicity. This is not just a preference. It's a survival mechanism baked into your neurobiology. At its core, the brain is an efficiency machine. It constantly seeks to minimize energy expenditure while maximizing rewards. This isn't philosophy, it's neuroscience. Our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning, reasoning, and decision-making, is powerful, but it's also incredibly energy-intensive. That's why your brain evolved shortcuts. It relies on habits, on automation, on systems that require the least cognitive effort. Psychologists call this the cognitive miser principle. We default to whatever path costs us the least mental energy. Now think about the traditional U.S. payment systems. Credit cards with layers of verification, ACH bank transfers that take days, or wire transfers burdened with fees and delays. Every step, taking out the card, entering numbers, waiting for approvals, triggers micro-calculations in your brain's decision-making centers. Your neural circuits are doing work, and over time, even small frictions like these can lead to decision fatigue. Enter UPI Unified Payments Interface. With UPI, you open an app, scan a QR code, confirm with a biometric or a PIN, and it's done. Money moves instantly, no lag, no cognitive load, no hidden fees. From a neuroscientific perspective, UPI is a frictionless system designed perfectly for human biology. It reduces the number of steps between intention and reward, and in doing so, it hijacks your dopaminergic circuits, the neural pathways tied to motivation, anticipation, and pleasure. Dopamine, contrary to popular belief, isn't about pleasure alone. It's about seeking. It's about anticipation. When an action leads swiftly to a reward, dopamine surges, reinforcing the behavior. UPI design creates this loop effortlessly. Scan, tap, reward. Scan, tap, reward. The brain experiences this as immediate gratification, which strengthens the striatum's connection to the behavior. The more you engage, the more automatic it becomes. This is called reinforcement learning, a biological principle at play inside every UPI user's brain. Now imagine this at scale: millions of people using UPI daily, billions of transactions, each one a tiny act of conditioning. Each one a strengthening of neural circuits that now expect seamless financial interactions. Once the brain adjusts to this baseline of efficiency, going back feels like regression. Anything slower, clunkier, or more costly creates frustration and cognitive dissonance. This is why UPI Impact is so disruptive. It's not just about technology. It's about a shift in the human brain's expectations. For Americans accustomed to systems with friction and fees, UPI doesn't just seem faster, it feels natural, even inevitable. The brain resists inefficiency once it has tasted efficiency. And here's the critical insight. This isn't just about India. It's about the biology of every human being exposed to UPI model. Once your neural reward pathways adapt to speed and simplicity, there's no going back. This is why the disruption of UPI isn't just economic, it's neurobiological. It's a reprogramming of the way humans think about money movement. In essence, UPI aligns perfectly with what the human brain wants: less effort, more reward. And systems that achieve that alignment aren't just adopted. They become indispensable. Now let's flip the lens and look at the institutions facing this disruption. When a dominant system perceives a threat, its response is eerily similar to the human nervous system's reaction to danger: fight, flight, or freeze. And right now, the U.S. financial ecosystem, banks, payment processors, credit card companies, is oscillating between fight and freeze. Why? Because their entire infrastructure wasn't built for speed or simplicity. It was built for control and profit. Credit card networks extract revenue through transaction fees. Banks make money on float, the time delay between transactions clearing. These aren't bugs, they're features of the system. To dismantle or overhaul these processes isn't just a technical challenge. It requires overcoming decades of entrenched revenue models and institutional habits. And here's where neuroscience offers a sobering insight. Human brains resist change, especially when it threatens survival. The amygdala, your brain's fear center, lights up in the face of uncertainty. Organizations are collections of human brains, and they behave the same way. Meanwhile, UPI isn't just offering a better product. It's conditioning users to expect zero fees and instant gratification. This isn't a small shift. It's a complete recalibration of what consumers perceive as normal. For U.S. companies, this means facing a customer base whose neural reward systems are being rewired elsewhere. And this is dangerous because if your users' brains are conditioned to expect seamlessness, anything less will trigger frustration, the result. If U.S. institutions don't engage in their own version of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, they risk becoming like Kodak in the age of digital photography or Blockbuster in the era of streaming. But history suggests most dominant systems don't adapt quickly enough. They freeze, hoping regulation or inertia will save them. But biology teaches us systems that fail to adapt in time atrophy. And in the face of UPI rise, that's a very real possibility for parts of the U.S. financial sector. In neuroscience, we often say, neurons that fire together wire together. This is the foundation of habit formation and learning. Now think about what happens when an entire population experiences a faster, more seamless way of handling money. Each time a UPI transaction occurs, billions of neurons strengthen the expectation of instant, frictionless payments. This isn't just individual neuroplasticity. This is societal neuroplasticity, an entire culture rewiring its relationship with money. For Americans exposed to UPI through travel, media, or global commerce, this contrast is powerful. They see a system that moves money as fast as thought and compare it to their own sluggish processes. Their brains begin to adjust, dissatisfaction grows, and as dopamine pathways reinforce this dissatisfaction, demand for better systems intensifies. But here's where the challenge deepens for the U.S. Neuroplasticity works best in environments of consistent reinforcement. For UPI users, that environment exists daily. For U.S. institutions to create a similar shift, they'd have to deliver not just technical parity, but also a psychological one, resetting user expectations that have been conditioned for decades. And the clock is ticking. Because once neural circuits adapt to a superior paradigm, regression feels unnatural, even painful. Think about how smartphones replaced flip phones. That transition wasn't just technological, it was biological. People's motor patterns, attention systems, and reward pathways all adapted. UPI is catalyzing a similar shift, but this time in the financial domain. And unless the U.S. financial system evolves quickly, it risks losing relevance in a world where instantaneous, zero-cost transactions aren't a luxury. They're the baseline. So when we say UPI is shaking the U.S. to its core, it's not an exaggeration. It's a recognition of how technology, aligned perfectly with human neurobiology, can disrupt even the most entrenched systems. The question isn't whether the US will feel this impact. It already is. The real question is whether it will adapt fast enough to survive. Because, as neuroscience teaches us, neurons that fire together wire together, and right now, billions of neurons around the world are wiring to a new reality, one where UPI speed, simplicity, and zero-cost transactions aren't optional. They're expected. This isn't just a technological race, it's a biological one, and only those who understand that will win.